You're listening to The White Rabbit, conversations on the art of presenting in a rather noisy world. Your hosts are Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. Matt helps leaders of international companies speak, write, and present with confidence. Alper is a communications trainer and a startup investor with a diverse portfolio of companies in Barcelona. If you like this podcast, please share it with friends and colleagues. Now, on to Matt and Alper for today's conversation.
Alper, today we have a guest, someone you and I both know, Ebru Demirel. Ebru runs an international moving and relocation company in Istanbul and was recently president of an industry organization based in Europe, which is what brings us to our topic for today. But before we get into today's topic, I want to mention two things in particular that I find fascinating about Ebru. One is that she travels a lot, as in not just a little, but a lot, pretty much all of the time. It seems like half the time when I contact Ebru, she's in yet another country. And the second thing I wanted to mention is that she regularly runs ultramarathons in the mountains. I remember when she started, running marathons, I thought that alone was impressive. But then shortly after her first marathon, she started running ultras too. Now, I personally think that running a marathon, I think that alone is a feat that most of us mere mortals can merely aspire to. But to do a couple of them back to back, sometimes while running on a trail in the dark in the mountains, that's just kind of mind-blowing. So anyway, Ebru, before we get into today's topic, before I forget, tell our listeners, if they want to get in touch with you, where can they email you or how can they find you?
First of all, thank you, Matt, for this kind introduction. They can always communicate me via email, which is Ebru, my first name, at asyannakliyat.com.
So Ebru at asyannakliyat.com, right? Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
So thanks, Ebru. And on to today's topic. So Ebru, in your time running the company and being president of the industry organization, you've probably pitched and seen pitched a bunch of ideas. So we're wondering, when people are pitching an idea to an organization, what are a couple things that you wish they knew or would say or should do?
Yeah. Sometimes when we are in a leading position and we work for a big association with hundreds or thousands of members, we are of course facing with situations where we need to take different paths, which meaning that acceptance of a new idea for the greater good for the industry and for its affiliates. And we know that it's good in the long term for the whole organization or association or even our own company. And by this thinking, we may forget the fact that we need to make a good explanation of what this new, adventure or idea that we want everybody to be board on. So the first thing that comes up to my mind is the fact that we have to be explaining all the cons and pros to the membership.
Okay.
We are acting on behalf of our company. I mean, I always say, although it's our family-run company, the moving company, there are hundreds of people working, and whatever happens in the company will have a huge impact on the people working there. Mm-hmm. So, and also, today's world is different than 20, 30 years ago. The way of leading was also different.
True.
People love to see transparency. Mm-hmm. They want to understand, and the information is everywhere. So we need to be explaining everything transparently. Not every idea is only positive. There might be also some negative effects in the long term. So we need to be telling that. Okay. Because obviously it's not going to be our only voting. There will be more. So for our long-term credibility, they need to make sure that there is no hidden agenda.
Okay.
That we just share everything upfront.
Okay.
You may have all this information, all the technical information, but then it comes to a good presenting. You may be, you know your topic very well, but if you are not well prepared for presenting it to the others who have no clue about the idea, then it will be also quite challenging or difficult for people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings the second thing, which is a good preparation.
Okay.
And I think, when you said that I was leading an international association, when I first joined the board, the first thing I did was finding you guys. I had a friend, so I knew that, I love my job. I have a passion of moving, and I was in a position where I was going to have a possibility or chances to lead this industry. And then I said, I'm not good enough for presentation in a way. So I think, like if you want to run a marathon, you need to run all these short distances, but you need to do it in a constantly according to a plan. So if you are going to lead a company or association, you need to make sure that how you present this to all the stakeholders requires also improvement in the way you present topics, ideas.
Okay.
And of course, working hard.
Okay.
And one more thing that comes up to my mind is sometimes, we make a great explanation.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great idea for the organization. But then you may find yourself that there's some resistance with some of the stakeholders.
Okay.
After all, you need to come to a point where you need to make a decision.
Mm-hmm.
So if you extend the decision process too long, you may look kind of weak as a leader. I mean, you need to be bold,
Okay.
and even if it's not accepted, you can move on.
Okay.
Maybe it's not the right time.
Okay.
You shouldn't take anything personal.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, in the past decades, the leadership style was different. The presidents of an associations were more like strong characters,
Mm-hmm.
and they were not. They were more. I think the democracy was less of a concern back then. It was
True.
more
True.
based on how strong they were. But
Mm-hmm.
today's world require more a serving leader,
Okay.
and I'm quite in favor of that.
Let's back up for a second. You mentioned earlier, transparency, and that transparency is an important part of maintaining a long-term reputation in the industry. And one part of the transparency that you mentioned was that you need to be willing, when you're pitching an idea, you need to be willing to describe the downside, right? The potential disadvantages. A lot of our clients, we find that they get nervous about describing the downside or the disadvantages of their plan, and they're kind of afraid of doing that. And their thought is that if I describe the downside, the board or the company or the organization or whatever, they're going to get freaked out. They're not going to like me or my plan. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
It makes us nervous because we want our idea to be accepted and carried out.
Okay.
But at the same time, it's not realistic of one idea being only positive.
Mm-hmm.
So if we believe that it's a good idea and the positivity or pros of this idea will be more than the downsides.
Okay.
So we shouldn't be, it will only make us more, real, and it will free us after all. If we say everything up front, look, there's going to be the benefits here, and here there might be some, negative impacts.
Okay.
So I think we shouldn't be afraid of that. Obviously, this is in our nature. It is more challenging to explain the downsides. But if we are the leader, we should be bold enough to also learn how to be more comfortable of explaining. Nothing can be all positive.
Yeah, and so I have one more question related to this topic, and then I'm going to throw it over to Alper, so I don't hog all the questions. So Ebru, if someone they're pitching an idea and they spend some time discussing the disadvantages of this idea or the potential downside or the risks of this idea, And they're secretly afraid that doing this is, it's going to reduce their position in the eyes of the board. Do you think they need to be afraid of that? Does the board see this person, this person is willing to describe the disadvantages of the plan? Does the board see that willingness? Is that a good reflection on the person or a bad reflection? What do you think? What's your opinion?
I think we should be smart on that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you only talk about negative sides of it, then of course it will look awkward.
Okay.
If it's so negative, why?
True.
Maybe like a good preparation on the presentation may come to a play here.
Okay.
Because you need to have a strategy while telling all the benefits. I mean, there must be a reason of this idea to bring it up.
True.
So while this is going to be helpful on this way, but we should also consider blah, blah. I think it's more like how we're going to present it. And we should be presented with a structure, with a certain logic.
Okay.
So it shouldn't be sounding only positive or
or only negative. Okay.
Yeah.
Good point. All right.
Balance.
So balance. That's true. Okay. So Alper, do you have questions for Ebru?
I have several, but I'll start with a comment first. I loved your approach to addressing the negativities up front. I'm a huge proponent of talking about if there's an elephant in the room rather than trying to stuff that poor thing under the rug and hope that it won't come out. I have done that for years and I can testify that it doesn't work. So I highly respect what you said, but that's not the only thing that I respect about you, Ebru, because when we met, which I believe was more than 10 years ago,
right.
You created this new perspective in my mind, in my life, which was everything, all sorts of services can be highly customized and provide a great value. Because I remember you telling us stories about the intricacies of moving people from one place to another, moving things. And to this day, by the way, I still remember some of the stories that you told, which were very powerful. I don't know if you remember them. There was a famous toilet seat story that you had told us. I'm not going to go into the details here, but I mean that was a game changer for me. So apart from the pitches in the organization, I would like to ask, in your business, for example, I know that you work with a very high level of clients, and you have a very, let's say, you provide a service that is high valued to a select audience. I wonder, in your business, for developing the business, did you use presentations? Were they part of your marketing? Were they some tools that was utilized in your company, or do you still use them?
When we visit a client, I mean, for instance, a corporate account, it's usually either procurement department, nowadays more procurement department, but it used to be more HR departments, or the individual who was going to move. Since most of our clientele are multinational companies and their global tenders are always given in the countries where they are originated, what we can do in Turkey is, while booking the move, is like individual quotation basis. So we are not, unfortunately, we cannot participate in global tender. Of course, if it was a Turkish company, yes, it would be, but Turkish companies don't have so much demand on that. So when we visit a client, it's usually a small, like few people, 2, 3, maximum 4. And it's like we never use a presentation. It's more like explaining our services face to face, what we are doing, maybe with supportive brochure, leaflets or reference lists. Unfortunately, since COVID, we don't even have this opportunity. People are mainly now working from home. But when I also go abroad to attend international conferences where we are affiliated, and we meet with lots of bookers from all over the world, and it is the same. It's usually 1 or 2 people from the company, USA, Europe, Asia, wherever it is, because these are the companies that have the contracts of some multinational companies. Yes. And it's always one-on-one meetings, which doesn't require any presentation.
I understand.
So presentation come into my life after I joined the association, but Yeah, I think it's gonna be with Bedel relocation site. We tend to see it, but it's online for the time being.
Yeah. But on the association, you use them extensively. Do I understand you correctly?
Absolutely,
Okay.
because it's always different big group of attendants and in a big meeting room with a big screen. So everything goes through the presentation.
I have a follow-up on that, Matt, but I can wait for you if you have a question on your mind.
No, I have no questions left, so go for it, Alper.
Okay. I wonder in these big events, especially where there are big screens, I am assuming that you're not the only speaker at these events, right? There are other speakers.
That's correct. Yeah.
And you watch the other presentations as well.
Correct. Yeah.
What is your general perception of the other presentations? How are they going?
When you are sitting and watching somebody presenting, it's so easy to make judgments as if, I'm doing better. Unfortunately, I do that a lot. According to my experiences of like 8 years, 9 years also already, and also being part of another board of a smaller European association, I think like language knowledge is one of a strong point for a presenter to be a good one, but also the education system. Some people have it naturally, but I see that especially Americans are really, it's their strong. I mean, some of them can be a little bit so, how do you say, I don't want to be mean, but like acting, it's too much sometimes.
Too rehearsed, maybe.
Yeah. It's a very high self-confidence or not pretend too much pretending in a way. But I think some of my friends who are really good presenters, I understand that in their education system, they have this presentation education while, since they are a child. In Turkey, for instance, we never had such a education.
No, we didn't. No.
And we were, in fact, when we wanted to say a word, we were like, you shut up, you keep quiet. We were always, it starts at home. You're a child, you're not supposed to say anything.
Yeah.
So maybe it's the cultural difference also play a role in there.
Could be. And Ebru, on more than one occasion, we have gone into our childhood issues and psychology in this podcast. So it's very possible that we are getting on the way to get to another one. So in all seriousness, I believe it's all related to the way we grew accustomed to putting ourselves in front of other people, or we did not. I mean, I wasn't one of those people, for example, and I'm assuming that you being born and raised in Turkey as well, you were not. Correct. As well. So yeah, it all boils down to our childhood.
You're right.
We could both pepper Ebru with questions all day long, but we do need to wrap this up. So before we wrap this up, Alper, do you have any more questions for Ebru?
I do, but if I continue, it will be a 2-hour episode, and we'll need to lie on the sofa and talk about our childhoods.
Okay, so let's wrap it up for today. So thank you very much, Alper and Ebru. It was a great pleasure to have you with us today, Ebru.
Thank you, Ebru.
Thank you so much. It's so nice talking to you both. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to The White Rabbit with Matt Krause and Alper Rozanes. You can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, or through your favorite feed.